James Comey, tomorrow, buddy, is your day of reckoning. Will you finally admit you tried to tip the scales for Hillary Clinton or continue to try to pull down President Trump? After weeks of negotiation, the former FBI director tomorrow scheduled to testify in front of the House Judiciary Committee on everything from alleged federal spying on the Trump campaign to his leaking of details on his interactions with the president. Earlier today on Fox News, Arizona GOP Congressman Andy Biggs said Republicans plan to read him the Riot Act. Watch.
Mr. Comey knows a whole lot, and things like why he kind of usurped Attorney General Loretta Lynch's authority when he wrote his exoneration letter, why he pre-wrote it before the investigation was complete. I mean, we're still dealing with that stuff that we haven't resolved. We need to know about the leaks that he issued and how he manipulated appointment of a special counsel, inconsistent statements with his public statements and testimony that he gave to the Senate. I mean, there's a whole lot with Mr. Comey, and then we need to move into personnel that he worked with and what he knew about them, their biases, and why he left them in place and why he chose Mueller to kind of get to the special counsel, his relationship with Rod Rosenstein. There is a whole host of things that Mr. Comey knows and he's made statements on. Some of them haven't been consistent, so we need to get to the bottom of that as well.
Congressman Biggs will be among those questioning Comey tomorrow. The former FBI director claims he wanted the hearing to be public, but it won't be. Instead, we're going to get a transcript on Saturday, and in a tweet, he explained why, saying, quote, "Grateful for a fair hearing from judge. Hard to protect my rights without being in contempt," which I don't believe in. "So we'll sit in the dark, but Republicans agree I'm free to talk when done, and transcript released in 24 hours. This is the closest I can get to public testimony." Oh, Jim. But now there's also a troubling report out on the now infamous FISA warrant application that initially led to the spying on the Trump campaign. According to The Hill, Comey and others knew the evidence for that warrant was shaky before the investigation began, but they pushed hard for it anyway. So should we believe what Comey says when he appears in the Capitol tomorrow? Joining now, Fox News national security strategist and former deputy assistant to President Trump, it is Dr. Sebastian Gorka, rejoining the show. Welcome back, sir.
Thanks for having me back.
Look at that. Also the author of Why We Fight. We spoke about that book just weeks ago. So let's talk a little bit about James Comey and his connection to special counsel and how leaking the memos that he had written, some of which contained classified information, made their way into the public sphere. And that's how we have Robert Mueller. What do you want some of these committee members to push hardest on?
Well, this might surprise you, Kennedy, but I'm less interested in his culpability in giving Hillary a walk. I think we have to concentrate on the crimes that this man committed when he knowingly leaked the briefing that he gave to the president-elect, President Trump, to his friend, who was not only a so-called professor, but we now find was a special employee of the FBI, and leaking that private briefing to the Washington Post, then afterwards taking what he deemed to be his private notes, but that he had written on a government laptop on government time and treating those as if they were personal. This man has all kinds of things to answer for, not even starting to discuss his culpability with the botched investigation of Hillary.
Well, it was a rather abrupt ending to the Hillary investigation when the Trump investigation began, and there are several outstanding questions, particularly with Christopher Steele. And how do they know? Because if that was the basis for this FISA warrant and the application that the FBI put forward, how do they know that Christopher Steele wasn't gathering some of the information from Russian agents illegally?
Well, look, not only that, if John Solomon's reporting today is accurate, this individual, the former director of the FBI, is in serious legal jeopardy because he is inside that email chain of communications whereby the DOJ and the FBI recognize how dubious the Steele dossier is before they applied for the FISA warrant to spy on the Trump campaign, which means James Comey knew that there was exculpatory evidence that file should never have been used for a surveillance warrant. And he also potentially lied about when they fired Steele as an asset of the FBI. Up to now, they've told us, oh, he was leaking to the press after we got the FISA warrant, and that's why we fired him. John Solomon says, wrong. That's a lie.
But that couldn't possibly be true, because it was those press reports that were also the basis for the FISA warrant,
right,
which, you know, creates this circular reasoning. The FBI, on its face with basic investigation, should have seen that and nixed the whole thing. They knew that. You know, one of the questions that I think they should press James Comey on is, what role did Bruce Ohr play in all of this?
Yes.
And when?
Absolutely, absolutely. Not only that, when you have the FBI investigators allow people who are suspects in the Hillary case to actually act as counsel to Hillary, and then the FBI, this is unheard. The FBI was ordered to destroy Hillary's laptops. On what basis? That decision had to have come from the 7th floor of the Hoover Building in Washington, and that might actually lead to the very desk of former FBI Director James Comey.
Well, doesn't that mean that he has, in fact, committed perjury in some of his congressional testimony?
Yes.
Well, if
Yes,
that's the case, and so now we're hearing that when Democrats take over these critical committees, including the Intelligence and Judiciary Committees, that they are going to hand over some of the testimony of Jared Kushner and Donald Trump Jr., among others, so Robert Mueller and his team can look for inconsistencies. If that's the case, isn't it fair that they do the same thing with James Comey and some of his testimony?
Absolutely. Let's find out who committed perjury, including former DNI Clapper. And also, the biggest question of all, Kennedy, is when did the surveillance operation on the Trump campaign begin? Who initiated it? Because right now, if you follow the writing of Lee Smith, of Sarah Carter, of John Solomon, it looks as if John Brennan, with an international sting, remember that Australian diplomat and Papadopoulos, started the whole chain and then told James Comey to open a file here in America. If that's the case, the perjury is all over the map. CIA, FBI, DOJ.
And, you know, we also have to see if national security was compromised in any of this, because as with Hillary Clinton and, you know, her server scandal, that is the biggest issue. Were lives ever at stake? And was government power abused in order to obtain politically damaging information? So far, they have not achieved their goal of pulling down the president yet. They're still working furiously to connect those dots, and we will keep our eyes on all of it. Thank you, Dr. Gorka.